Who follows literature at all, the great novelist Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird and published it back in the 1960s, has issued her second novel of her entire career, titled Go Set, Watchman. It's caused a sensation in the world of publishing and reading and literature. And one of the facts that we know about this is that she actually wrote Go Set, Watchman before she wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. And the situation that happened there was that she took Go Set, Watchman to a publisher. He told her, you need to write this story of what happened before Atticus Finch grew old and Scout grew up. The story of her growing up with her father as a lawyer in the Deep South during segregation. And she did that, and that became To Kill a Mockingbird. The follow-up, Go Set, Watchman, was never published. No, matter of fact, people didn't even know it existed until recently. But this statement has to do with some statements that have been made recently that bother me to a great extent concerning the character of Atticus Finch. Great literary characters are important to me, and Atticus Finch is one of the great literary characters of all time. Many people thought of Atticus Finch as a great figure who stood up for integration, who stood up for black people at a time when it was unpopular. And so they're very disappointed when they find out in his old age, in Go Set, Watchman, he's grown into his golden years of old age, and it's the 1960s, and the civil rights movement is raging and all the violence that involved. And he says things that make him seem to some people to be a racist, and I think this is wrong. It's an oversimplification of a very complex situation, and I believe it's wrong to call the literary figure Atticus Finch a racist. And here's my take on this. When he defended Jim in To Kill a Mockingbird, it's a great stand for justice. It took a lot of courage for him to do that, as all know who read the book and love the book. It's one of the great courageous acts in all of literature. And but he didn't do that. He didn't defend Jim because he was a great believer in integration, per se. He didn't do it because he was against segregation. He did it because he thought Jim was innocent. He did it for justice. He was a man who wanted justice, no matter what. And so this was a stand for the simple idea of human justice rather than to say anything about integration or racism and that sort of thing. So later, when Atticus is old, and segregation becomes a thing of the past, and people are warring and fighting and killing each other in the 1960s over the idea of integration. Atticus is old, and he begins to believe that maybe we were better off being separate. Maybe the whites and blacks were better off living separately. This is not something that was uncommon among elderly people in the 1960s. It's totally understandable that he might feel that way. Scout, as a grown-up young adult, having moved to the sophisticated Big Apple, comes home to visit him, and she is very upset that her father would express this idea. She even says she hates him and she doesn't want anything to do with him and that sort of thing, because she sees it as a racist comment. And he doesn't mean it that way at all. It's a much more complex thing. He's simply saying that in his late in life, having seen all this happen over the many, many decades of his life, that possibly whites and blacks would not be able to live together. He was saying that in light of the bombing of churches, the the famous Freedom Riders bus that was blown up, and many people were almost killed in that attempt to drive a bus down to New Orleans, and in light of many other tragic events including assassination of Martin Luther King and those sorts of things. So Atticus is a much more complex human than just racist, non-racist, and I believe that people should avoid calling him a racist. I don't believe that it's fair and it's right and correct to label a great literary character like Atticus Finch as a racist, and I believe that you need to rethink, if that's what you're thinking, do some rethinking and possibly rereading and go back and consider the other possibilities that I've discussed here. I appreciate your time. Hope you have a beautiful day. And remember, never ever kill a mockingbird, because all they do is sing their hearts out for you.